Kia ora koutou, Markie here, walking home from the office the last time for what could be some time yet, and heavily laden with lots of stuff. I feel like a donkey. I thought it would be a good opportunity to do a video, and I'm conscious that I've done a lot of stuff on retroactive jealousy at the moment. What about my lovely subscribers and patrons and followers that don't suffer with retroactive jealousy and don't want to leave you out, really? And a few people have asked me to do some more stuff on occult topics. So yeah, let's do that. Okay. So bear in mind that whenever I tackle these kind of things, I don't come at it from a belief system. So I'm not going to tell you about the mysteries of life and death and what's in between from the point of view of I kind of know shit, because I don't. I don't think any of us do, really. But I follow these things avidly and read a lot and have lots of thoughts on the topic, which I can share with you, and hopefully will be interesting. So I don't expect you to believe any of this, okay? Because just because I tackle a lot of woo-woo topics doesn't mean that I believe in a lot of woo-woo things. And as many of you will know, I try not to go around believing anything, really. I think beliefs are often dangerous things. So I have an interest in ghosties. I used to do ghost walks, where you go take a group of people around a town and tell them about all the hauntings and the local legends and myths and a bit of history and mystery. I used to have a lot of fun doing that. It used to be a good excuse to dress up in outlandish costumes. so something I have an interest in. I think the whole subject of ghosts, it's a big one. I was going to do a kind of a big video on this, what are ghosts? Because I think people make lots of assumptions. And there are, probably about 20, or at least kind of 10, 15 different theories about what we perceive as ghosts. What actually might be going on there. So I was going to do a monster video, if let's use the pun, going through all of those. But it's kind of one of those things I think I'll probably never do. I'll probably, because it is quite a long one and it does need a bit of preparation, really. And preparation is something I don't seem to do these days. Or spontaneous and in the moment. But what I thought I'd do is just break it down a bit and just talk about one ghost theory. Maybe I might throw a few other ghost theories into the mix just for comparison. But what I want to talk about is something called stone tapes theory, okay? Which you may or may not have heard of. It might ring a bell because there was a TV drama of that name, but more on that in a moment. Okay, so most people tend to make the assumption that ghosts are spirits of the dead, and that may be true, and it may not be true, or it may be partially true, and it may apply in some cases. So somebody might experience ghost phenomena, and it could be spirits of the dead. But in my opinion, I think it could be a whole range of things causing what we perceive as ghosts. And one of these is explained by stone tapes theory. So this isn't going to make a lot of sense to young people, okay? Because tapes, sellotape, duct tape, gaffer tape. What we're talking about in terms of tapes, think recordings, okay? Because back in my day, God, I've suddenly got so old. Back in my day, we used to listen to tapes, which meant cassettes. So basically it was a way of listening to music. Mainly pretty good for in the car, because cars have a tape player in them. And then when CDs came out, they started having CD players in them. But CDs were a bit of a nightmare in cars. Tapes worked much better, because you could kind of throw them around. You could take one out of the player and just throw it on the seat, and if it fell down into the footwell, it didn't really matter. But CDs, they get horribly scratched if you move them around and stuff like that. So tapes, recordings, okay, and if you're really old, records. Okay. So stone tapes theory is a theory that visual and auditory impressions can become, from events, can become embedded in physical objects, namely stone. Although I don't think it rules out other objects, so potentially wood. So one theory is that when people see a ghostly apparition, maybe let's say it's a figure, or maybe it's a voice, that what has happened is that there are certain circumstances, and one of the theories is that maybe high emotion is one of those circumstances. So maybe a grisly murder or something like that, that an event would get recorded just like on an audio tape or a videotape. I didn't talk about videotapes, did I? I could have gone on about Betamax and VHS, and then through some unknown mechanism be replayed in in whatever circumstances trigger it, so that when people see an apparition of say a figure, or they hear a voice, that there's not an intelligence, there's nobody there, but what has happened is on some level some natural phenomenon has enabled events to be recorded and replayed. Okay, so interesting theory, I think. So stone tapes, it takes its name from, or it inspired, I don't know which, a TV drama by Nigel Neal. Now, Nigel Neal, for those of you who aren't nerds, was the author of Quatermass. Now, Quatermass, goes back quite a way. It was, the first, I think it's been about three series or something of Quatermass. So the first ones were black and white. But I remember watching one when I was, I must have been probably younger than 12. And it was fantastic. I kind of watched it again recently. What was the full title? But it was a series about kind of a dystopian society, which we're in now, and something that was kind of drawing kind of hippie kind of type people to kind of drop out and in masses, like kind of zombies or like lemmings. They kind of went to a lot of key ancient places like stone circles, and then they would suddenly disappear, and their belief was that they were being taken to another planet, but actually they were being fed upon by some alien entity. And Professor Quatermass, because he's a professor, managed to kind of save the day. So it's damn good actually. And then Quatermass and the Pit was the other one that I saw, and it was one of the things that inspired Doctor Who, actually. Quatermass, Professor Quatermass, the character, but interestingly Nigel Neal apparently hates Doctor Who. But Nigel Neal also wrote this series. Was it a series, or was it I can't remember whether it was like a one-off drama, like a mini film, or whether it was a series, but that was quite good. It's watchable. If you know what stone tapes theory is, it probably will spoil it to some degree, but it's quite good, worth a watch, I think. So that's where it comes from. So, and this kind of makes sense when you look at certain cases of haunting. So for example, you get very repetitive hauntings sometimes. A figure is seen, a monk is seen moving in a particular, walking from one place to another on a regular basis, and doesn't respond to anyone around them. And sometimes there's heard stories where somebody does some building work and maybe they knock down a wall, and then after they knock down the wall, they kind of start to see a repetitive kind of ghostly apparition. And some people would say, it's the spirits, they don't like what you've done to the house, or what have you, which might be true. But the other explanation is that it was happening anyway. This apparition was taking place on maybe quite a regular basis, but because there was a dirty great wall in between where anyone was likely to see it and the apparition, nobody saw it. But take the wall down, you can see the apparition. So that's one of the theories behind it. Also accounts for another theory, although there are other explanations for this, which we'll maybe get into in another one. into why ghosties sometimes don't have feet. We say they don't need feet, Mark, because they can float around. Well, the theory is that they are walking along at the ground level that existed in their day, because of course ground levels change, and ground levels tend to kind of get higher rather than lower, which is why archaeologists can find things from below the ground. Sometimes it's because things are buried, sometimes it's just because things have. I'm just moving or reorganizing myself because I'm carrying incredibly heavy bags here. So the ground level, generally speaking, gets higher over time. Probably where things like leaves fall and they rot down and become soil, and the soil level rises. So the theory is that the apparition is walking in exactly the same position that they would have walked back in the 1500s or whenever it was, but the ground level was different then. So it's not that they don't have feet, but it's that their feet may be below the ground, if they are part of the apparition at all. So that is Stone Tape's theory, and I think one of the things that annoys me a little bit about some ghost hunting kind of folks is that they automatically presume that anything that they encounter or experience is an intelligent entity that they can kind of talk to, and I think maybe quite often that is the case, but not necessarily, and I'm a great one for having an open mind. So if you're interested in this, I can talk about some of the other theories around what we perceive as ghosts. I think ghost is a word that we bandy around a lot, really, but I think it's a very vague word, really. So happy to talk some more about this one. Hope you found that interesting. Hope you are not on lockdown in a haunted house, unless you're a ghost hunter and you enjoy that kind of thing. If you are in a haunted house, then maybe take some reassurance that it might just be